Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here with Andrew Bone, and we're here to talk about today's daily recruiting nugget. We know y'all love these. Today, we're talking about four-star quarterback Miller Moss. Andrew, what's the latest with him?
Well, Miller Moss is a Rivals 100 quarterback out of California, just outside of Los Angeles, and uh, you know heavily recruited by a lot of schools. And recently narrowed his focus down to four schools: two SEC and two Pac-12 schools. USC, UCLA, obviously a little bit closer to home for him, and then a little bit further away, Baton Rouge and Tuscaloosa. So Alabama and LSU on that list. And those are his top four schools, his final four schools that he's really kind of zeroed in on. A lot of the biggest thing with quarterbacks these days is they like to make early decisions. They go on a lot of visits early. They start getting recruited when they're sophomores, when they're juniors, and we've continued to see a lot of the big name quarterbacks make their decisions. Now, obviously, we see a lot of those guys end up flipping down the road, and maybe a quarterback's coach ends up leaving, or a coordinator leaves, or even a head coach. There's just so many different scenarios that play into these kids flipping, decommitting, stuff like that. But with Miller Moss, he's one of the few quarterbacks that's still on the open market, still being heavily recruited by a lot of schools, but has really focused in on these four schools with Alabama, LSU, USC, and UCLA. And those are kind of the four schools that, have, like I said, recruited him the hardest over the course of the last few months. And that's why he's focused in on these four. And, hopefully for him, he can, obviously it's going to be a little bit easier for him to travel over to UCLA's campus and USC's campus. But when's he going to be able to make it back over to Tuscaloosa and the Baton Rouge? That's going to be, kind of the thing that everybody's going to be watching is those trips and when those will take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, obviously recruiting a quarterback right now, we don't know who's going to start for Alabama next year. It seems like it's going to be maybe Mac Jones or Bryce Young. But with Bryce Young just coming in, does that hurt Alabama in the recruitment for Moss?
Well, I think, anybody that looks at it from an outsider's perspective, they're automatically probably going to assume that's the case. You get the number one quarterback in the country. He's going to come in, and there's a lot of hype. And the biggest thing with him is he's from California, so Miller Moss knows all about him, knows what he's about. But I think on the flip side of it, you have to. I think what Alabama will have to use in terms of recruiting him is, they had Jalen Hurts come in as a true freshman, led them to the national championship game. They lost the championship game against Clemson, but led them to the national championship as a true freshman, was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year as a true freshman. And then obviously he, ends up, getting unseated by Tua. And I think that's something that, Alabama's probably going to be selling them. Like, hey, it doesn't matter, if Bryce Young ends up starting as a true freshman and wins all the awards and is the best player, we're still going to play the best player regardless of who it is. So if Miller Moss decided to sign with Alabama, and Bryce Young started and had an unbelievable year, well, if Miller Moss is better than him, they're going to start him. And that's kind of been the biggest thing that Alabama's been selling recruits. We're going to play the best player regardless of the accolades or whatever. And I think that's something that he likes. I mean, we saw that Nick Saban talked to him as soon as Tua got drafted, the other night, and I think that really helped him a lot. At least let him know that he is a top priority target for Alabama, and somebody that they really want as a part of this recruiting class. Now, on the flip side of this, Alabama signed the best quarterback in the country in 2020, and Bryce Young, and he's already enrolled at Alabama. Of course, it's a little different now because he's back in California working out because of this because of the coronavirus. But he's missing he missed the entire spring practice, so he's not going to have that leg up heading into the fall. We'll just have to wait and see kind of what happens. But I think with Alabama, you can continue to recruit Miller Moss, continue to say, hey, we don't have a set starting quarterback yet. And I think he's certainly a guy that they want. They're going to continue to recruit, and we'll see what happens. But I don't think they have to recruit any other quarterbacks at this time.
Mm-hmm.
They have Miller Moss. They're recruiting him. There's some other guys that they're still kind of keeping in touch with, but I think he's kind of the focal point. Especially not being committed anywhere. Jalen Milrose committed to Texas, so it's somebody that they've liked for a very long time, but we don't even know if he's going to make a return visit back. So I think Alabama's going to wait and see what happens with Miller Moss's recruitment before they kind of press forward and say, all right, let's go and get somebody else.
And obviously, from a team's perspective, quarterback isn't one of Alabama's greatest needs, but to his injury probably highlights you always want to take a quarterback just because you never know what happens.
Yeah, that's right. You're one play away from losing your starting quarterback. So yeah, I think with Alabama, and I've said this every year since Nick Saban's been at Alabama, is he wants to take a quarterback in every recruiting class if he can. They certainly want to take a quarterback in this year's class, and regardless of them signing Bryce Young, I think even if they signed 2 quarterbacks last year, they probably still want to try to sign one quarterback in this class, and they really want to get one this year. And as we see, Miller Moss is clearly their top target at this time.
Yeah, and obviously, I think you mentioned this earlier. Bryce Young also coming from out west. Alabama has shown they've had success recruiting guys from California. Does Alabama have a strong footing there? Is this, if we look historically, is Alabama at a real disadvantage with these California schools, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, they've spent a lot of time out there. I mean, the coaching staff has definitely built a strong connection out there. Now, some of the connections have been lost because, you had Tosh Deploy, who had such a strong connection with a bunch of coaches and programs out there. And I think that certainly helped recruit. And that probably hurt them a little bit in last year's class because there were some guys that I felt like they had a good chance to sign. And when Tosh left, it kind of ruined the relationships there. But, Steve Sarkisian, a lot of great connections out on the West Coast, and I think he's done a really good job. And Alabama's done a great job recruiting top players and signing top players who've come in and been game changers. You look at Jonah Williams and Najee Harris. Those are just 2 of the top guys who've come in and had a tremendous impact. And now you get the top quarterback in the country from the West Coast. So a lot of those West Coast guys, they know about Bryce Young, even if it might not be a quarterback. Other positions that Alabama's recruiting, whether it's receiver, running back, tight end, whatever it may be, they know about Alabama signing Bryce Young in last year's class, and obviously they know about guys like Jonah Williams and Najee Harris.
And then just specific to Miller Moss's recruitment, is there a coach that you're hearing come up that sort of stands out as maybe his primary point of contact that's really trying to convince him to commit to Alabama?
Yeah, he continues to say that Steve Sarkisian is a guy that he's got a great relationship with, and also Nick Saban. I think they've done a lot of FaceTime calls together, and Coach Saban, Coach Sark both reached out to him. After the draft on last Thursday, especially after Tua got drafted number 5 overall. So they've got a great relationship, good connection with Sark there. So that's something to continue to watch moving forward. How good is that relationship going to continue to grow? And obviously, I think probably one of the biggest things, and something that Alabama fans don't want to hear, is we saw last year a lot of top programs were coming after Sark. There was some not necessarily coming after, but interviewing him, and he was a finalist for a few head coaching jobs, didn't get any, but where does he take this offense this year at Alabama? Does he get some more opportunities? And that's probably something that Miller Moss is going to be watching as well. So that's kind of on the flip side of things.
Yeah, and so you mentioned it a couple of times, Saban reaching out to Moss on draft night. Yeah, I know that our premium members of our site have seen you and read you talk about this earlier this week. But, what does that mean when Saban calls you on the night of the first round of the draft? Does that sort of convey that, hey, you're a priority guy to these guys? Is that something that does Saban pick and choose which guys he kind of calls on that night?
Yeah, there's probably a list of, I don't know how big the
Hmm.
list is, but there's certainly a priority list, and a list of guys that Alabama wants to reach out to and talk about the NFL draft. And he's done that every single year. Now, there's been a lot of years where he's reached out to guys, and some guys may not have answered, and or maybe their phone didn't work, or maybe they just couldn't get in touch with them. But I think they reached out to a lot of guys this year once again, especially guys that that got that got drafted at certain positions. So quarterback, you reach out to Miller Moss. Wide receiver, you reach out to your top wide receiver targets, and so on and so on. So I think that's kind of what Alabama did this year. Now I still think they reached out to probably some other guys at some other positions, but they certainly reached out to their priority targets either on draft night or the night or the next day on Friday.
Well, thanks, Bo. And I learned a lot, and hopefully our viewers learned a lot from this discussion too. We'll be back next week with more daily recruiting nuggets from Andrew Bone. In the meantime, I'd encourage everybody to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and consider being a member of our loyalty club. We recently launched that. We hit the threshold we needed, so check that out. You can kind of see the reward options. There will be exclusive opportunities for y'all to sort of interact with us and get extra content for those people member of that club. And also consider becoming a premium member of BamaInsider.com. You're going to get a lot more recruiting coverage from Andrew Bone, and you're also going to get team coverage from time to time. So absolutely, it's well worth it.